My father, James Carter, had lived in the peaceful Oak Ridge Estates for nearly 2 decades. He had bought his modest single-story house with the dream of enjoying his retirement in tranquility. The community was well kept, but the Homeowners Association had always been a thorn in his side, issuing fines for trivial matters like the color of his shutters or the height of his grass. But nothing prepared him for the day he noticed cracks spreading across his driveway. His backyard, once level, had started to sink. Confused and worried, he called in an inspector. The news was worse than he imagined. The structural integrity of his property was being compromised by illegal construction nearby. That was when he discovered the truth. The HOA board, led by the ruthless president Mitchell Langley, had authorized an unpermitted expansion of the community gym. The expansion project extended dangerously close to the property line, disturbing the ground beneath my father's home. Worse, it was done in secret, without informing nearby homeowners or seeking their consent. James confronted Langley at the next HOA meeting, demanding answers. Langley, smug and dismissive, assured everyone that the construction was legal and beneficial for the neighborhood. When my father pressed the issue, the board hit him with retaliatory fines, accusing him of having unauthorized alterations in his yard. Furious but determined, my father knew he had to fight back. But he also knew that taking down the HOA required more than just words. James began gathering evidence. He documented the construction site, taking photos and videos of the illegal expansion. He hired a private engineer to assess the damage, whose report confirmed that the HOA's reckless digging had severely weakened his home's foundation. The next step was rallying the community. He went door to door, speaking with neighbors who also suffered under the HOA's iron-fisted rule. Some were too afraid to speak out, fearing fines or foreclosure threats. But a few brave homeowners joined him. Among them was Emily Davis, whose fence had been torn down without warning to make way for the gym expansion, and Carlos Ramirez, who had received fines for excessive noise when his teenage son practiced guitar in their garage. The tipping point came when James filed an official complaint with the city's building department. An inspector arrived, and what they found was damning. The gym's expansion had no permits, no safety clearance, and no regard for zoning laws. The HOA had been using community funds to pay off contractors under the table. But Langley was not one to go down easily. He leveraged his connections at City Hall to stall the investigation. Then, one evening, James came home to find a notice of violation taped to his door. His house was now being targeted for code violations. His mailbox was suddenly too large. His garden was out of regulation. The fines stacked up, and he knew the HOA was trying to break him financially. That was when he decided. If they wanted a war, he would give them one. James turned to the one thing the HOA feared most, public exposure. With the help of his daughter, Sarah, he compiled all the evidence, including emails and documents leaked by a disgruntled former board member. Then, he contacted a local investigative journalist. Within a week, a damning expose hit the news. The headline, Homeowners Association Corruption, Secret Gym Expansion Endangering Residents. The report featured interviews with affected homeowners, footage of the illegal construction, and proof of financial misconduct. The fallout was immediate. City officials, now under public scrutiny, launched an investigation into the HOA's finances. The gym expansion was halted, and a cease and desist order was issued. The HOA board members scrambled to cover their tracks, but the more they tried, the more evidence surfaced. Misappropriated funds, bribed inspectors, and fraudulent fines. It all came to light. Langley, now panicked, tried to cut a deal with James, offering to forgive his fines if he backed off. James laughed in his face. The man who had tormented him and his neighbors for years was now begging for mercy. Then came the final blow. The homeowners held a vote to remove the entire board. The results were decisive. Langley and his cronies were ousted. A new board was formed, one that prioritized fairness and transparency. James was offered a position, but he declined. He had done what he set out to do, bring justice to his home and his neighbors. James Carter's resolve burned brighter than ever as he prepared for the final confrontation with the oppressive HOA. The evidence he had painstakingly gathered, the photographs, measurements, official complaints, and even the damning testimony of his neighbors, had already rattled the foundations of the HOA's authority. Yet, with each step he took toward justice, James knew the stakes were higher than ever. The morning after the chilling break-in at his home, James installed new security cameras along every vulnerable corner of his property. He wasn't content with merely documenting their intimidation tactics. He intended to build an irrefutable case against Mitchell Langley and his cronies. Every captured moment would be a testament to the lengths the corrupt board would go to silence dissent. That same day, the city's building department, now armed with James's evidence and spurred by growing public outcry, launched a comprehensive investigation into the Oak Ridge Community Gym's illegal expansion. Karen McAllister, the meticulous lead inspector, returned to construction site with renewed determination. Her measured steps and relentless probing soon revealed a tangled web of shortcuts and deliberate code violations. These records show a complete absence of permits, and the engineering reports are nowhere to be found, she announced to a small gathering of officials and anxious homeowners. The grim reality was undeniable. The gym expansion had not only breached zoning laws, but had also compromised the structural integrity of nearby properties, including James's own. Back at the HOA clubhouse, tension was thick in the air. The emergency meeting called by Langley had taken on a desperate tone. Once a symbol of authority, Langley now appeared gaunt and agitated as he tried to muster a defense. Board members who had once nodded in deference began to exchange furtive glances. Their allegiance was crumbling as rapidly as the foundations they had risked for profit. Langley attempted to rally the board, his voice wavering as he declared, "This is nothing more than a misinterpretation of events, a temporary setback that we will correct." But James's steady, measured tone cut through the chaos. "Correct?" he challenged, standing in the center of the room, his eyes fixed on Langley. "You corrected nothing but our trust. Our homes, our safety, have been jeopardized by your reckless decisions." The murmurs of discontent grew louder. Among the crowd, neighbors who had long suffered in silence, Emily Davis, the Parkers, Aaron, and Lisa voiced their indignation. "We trusted you," one elderly resident said, voice trembling with both sorrow and anger. "Our community was supposed to be safe." Their words resonated deeply, stirring a collective determination to hold the corrupt leadership accountable. Sarah Lynn, the tenacious reporter who had been following the saga, pressed further. "Mr. Langley, can you explain why none of the required permits were ever secured? Why was the expansion pushed forward without proper oversight?" Her questions, sharp and unyielding, left Langley visibly shaken. His usual retort faltered as he realized that not only had the law been broken, but his personal financial ties with the construction contractors were now laid bare for all to see. In that moment, a nervous board member named Robert Hayes, who had long harbored doubts about Langley's decisions, stood up. "I move that Mitchell Langley be removed from his position immediately," he declared, his voice resonating with the collective spirit of the room. Before anyone could object, another member echoed his sentiment. The vote was swift and decisive, a clear repudiation of the man who had misused power for far too long. As Langley's dismissal became official, the atmosphere in the clubhouse shifted from one of simmering anger to triumphant vindication. But for James, the battle was far from over. He had dedicated his life to safeguarding structures and communities, and now he was determined to ensure that Oak Ridge Estates would never again fall prey to such abuse. Later that evening, as twilight bathed the neighborhood in a gentle glow, James walked the quiet streets, his mind racing with plans for the next steps. The HOA's dismantling was only part of the victory. The city's legal machinery was now poised to impose heavy penalties on those responsible for the illegal expansion. Lawsuits were being prepared, and the construction company, complicit in the scheme, was under intense scrutiny. For every inch of unauthorized expansion, there would be an equal measure of accountability. James paused in front of his house, a home that bore both the scars of the battle and the promise of restoration. He recalled his father's words, "Stand up for what is right, no matter the cost." In that moment, he vowed that Oak Ridge Estates would be a beacon of integrity, a community where every homeowner's voice would be heard and respected. The next morning, as repair crews began the painstaking work of restoring damaged driveways and stabilizing compromised foundations, the neighborhood buzzed with cautious optimism. Neighbors gathered to watch the progress, exchanging relieved smiles and tentative plans for rebuilding not just their properties, but their trust in community leadership. Emily Davis approached James, offering a gentle nod of gratitude. "You did it, James. You showed us that even a single voice can echo loudly enough to bring about change." Her words, simple yet profound, reinforced the truth that the fight for justice was a collective one. Yet, even as the immediate threat receded, a lingering uncertainty hung in the air. The dismantling of Langley's reign was a victory, but it was also a reminder that power, when misused, could resurface in unexpected ways. James knew that true transformation required ongoing vigilance, a commitment to holding every leader accountable and ensuring that the community's voice remained unyielding. As dusk fell on Oak Ridge Estates, James stood on his porch, the softened recovery around him, and contemplated the road ahead. The battle against corruption had been hard fought, but it was not the end of the struggle. There were still questions to be answered, reforms to be enacted, and a community to be continuously protected. In the reflective quiet of that evening, as the last rays of sunlight faded, James whispered to himself, "This is only the beginning." His eyes, though tired, shone with renewed determination, a promise to himself and his neighbors that Oak Ridge Estates would never again be a playground for the unscrupulous. And while the immediate conflict had reached a resolution, the legacy of this battle would serve as a rallying cry for all who believed in justice and integrity. The story of this neighborhood, scarred yet unbowed, was far from over. New challenges loomed on the horizon, but so did the promise of a community united against injustice. With the echoes of that promise lingering in the cool night air, James Carter felt a bittersweet satisfaction. The reckoning had come, and the corrupt forces had been held to account. But as the shadows deepened, he knew that vigilance was the price of freedom, and that the fight for truth was an enduring journey.